Everybody ready? Everybody's good? All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your patience. First and foremost, I want to thank Mayor Turner for being here, being a great boss and a great supporter of the Houston Police Department, the men and women that we are privileged to lead, and the privilege of actually being your chief. I appreciate you, Mayor. What we're going to do is we're going to go over this incident. Mayor, I'm going to set up the stage. Then I will come back up and go over what the public has just seen and the members of the media have seen. I will then announce our findings as a department. I want to thank my command staff that's here, our executive assistant chiefs and the chiefs that are here for always being a great family and a great team. And I want to thank Deputy Director Spiegel and her team for all the work they do, not just on this case, but on all cases. And obviously I want to thank Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee for always standing with us. So we're here to announce the results of the conclusion of the administrative investigation in the matter involving the shooting of Nicolas Chavez, 27-year-old member of our community. This incident occurred on April 21st, 2020, and at about 8:51 p.m. the department received 911 calls to respond to I-10 at Lockwood. We are going to play a video that is very hard to watch. It has raw language, and it has multiple instances of the use of deadly force, 3 different separate instances, a discharge of firearm by a member of the Houston Police Department, and it has very vivid instances of Mr. Chavez harming himself with what was thought to be at the time edged weapon or a knife, and turned out to be a piece of rebarb. This video that you see starts with the 5 911 calls received by the Houston Police Department. We want to be as transparent as possible. Those 911 calls will give the community some insight into what we were responding to. It will then go from beginning to end. From our arrival on the scene and our first contact with Mr. Chavez, you will see various members of the department engaging with Mr. Chavez. You will see multiple uses of less lethal force, including beanbags out of 2 different shotguns and multiple deployments with tasers. It has been redacted for 2 purposes. Number 1, for purposes of time. This was a very protracted training. It went on for quite a while. So what we have done is we've edited parts where there was nothing going on, but what the community will see is what led up to every discharge of less lethal, and you will see every discharge of lethal, which means gunfire, by members of the Houston Police Department. You will also see the discharges from different angles, from different views, from different body-worn cameras. All officers that used force in this incident were equipped with body-worn cameras, and all cameras were activated as required by policy. All the evidence in this case was submitted from the department to the District Attorney's Office on June 23rd of this year, and the only thing that's outstanding is the ballistics report, to my knowledge, from the Forensic Science Center. They have this video that you will see today, and they will have all the unedited videos are in the hands of the district attorney. When the community sees this video, they will be able to assess with their own eyes what we did right, what we did wrong, and I believe that the video speaks for itself in terms of when I talk about my findings later. Again, I want to advise the media that nothing is redacted in terms of the use of force, and that includes the use of deadly force. In the spirit of transparency, which is what this community has called for, and what my mayor supports, at the 7:34 mark, you will see at the 7:34 mark will be 2 shots fired by Sergeant LeBlanc. There will be 2 shots fired by Sergeant LeBlanc. So it's important for the community to know, the media, that if you're going to be doing this live, you need to bleep it at 7:34 if you have a delay, and there will be other angles each time. So until you see us clear, you'll be seeing the same use of force more than once. At the 12:56 mark, 5 minutes and 22 seconds later, or in terms of the marking, you will have one discharge from Officer Went of a firearm. That shot will cause Mr. Chavez to fall to the ground. Again, that's at the 12:56 mark, and you probably will have more than one view, so be aware of that. It has not been redacted. Then at the 13:56 mark, which is the conclusion of the incident, is the third and final discharge of firearms. At the 13:56 mark, Sergeant LeBlanc and 3 other members, officers of the Houston Police Department, discharged a total of 21 rounds, striking Mr. Chavez multiple times. That last discharge is very difficult to watch, as you can imagine, and you will see it from 5 different angles. We put every single angle and every single point of view from all 4 officers that shot, because this community has invested a lot of money in terms of technology and in the spirit of transparency, and we believe that it was important for the community to see the vantage point of every officer, what they saw, what they were experiencing when they decided to fire those 21 rounds. So at the 13:56 mark, keep in mind, that's when will be the last 21 shots that is already a public, it's already there in public out there, but it's much more clear, and you'll have a much more, it's harder to watch. So be aware that's going to be from 4 or 5 different angles. I think it's about 5 different angles that we provide that. So if you're going to bleep it, you're going to have to bleep at the 13, as we approach the 13:56 mark, it's going to be 5 different angles, so you're going to see the same thing leading up again and again. So you'll have to look very closely as he reels in the taser, Mr. Chavez. The second that he gets that taser and picks it up, that's when you will see discharge. So I'm describing that so the media will know when to, each time, when to hit the delay button. Any questions before we start? So after we see this, please, let's keep the noise down. We're going to watch it straight through, then we'll come back up. I will walk the community and everyone in here through the investigation and our findings and our rulings, and then the mayor will make some comments, and then we'll open it up to questions. Keep in mind that we have an active case, criminal case, that is pending before the district attorney's office, and we will be limited in what we talk about because that's out of my lane and it's not in the DA's office lane, and I'm going to refer allow those questions to her. Okay? All right. Thank you very much. Houston Police Chief Art Acevedo. I'd like to update you on an officer-involved shooting incident that occurred on April 21st, 2020. But first, a word of caution. The videos you are about to see are graphic and may be difficult to watch. In addition, these videos contain strong language and viewer discretion is strongly advised. Following several 911 calls, officers were advised just before 9 p.m. of a man in an apparent mental crisis. He was reported to be jumping in front of cars on I-10 near Lockwood, and then a few minutes later he was reported to be in the 800 block of Gazin Street.
Houston, 911, any medical, police, or fire?
Police?
This is Haley. What is the address of your emergency?
It's by I-10. We're on the freeway, and there was a man on the freeway, walked a little bit behind exiting Lockwood.
Okay, what direction of travel were y'all on, going towards or away from downtown?
Towards downtown.
He was on the freeway?
Yes.
Houston, 911, any medical, police, or fire?
I believe police, ambulance, or whatever you have to do.
Medical, and I'm being transferred to medical, let them police too.
Houston Fire Medical, what location?
I'm off of I-10,
before you get to Lockwood, going to downtown, there's a man in the freeway, and I don't know if a car hit him already or what. But there's a guy screaming in the freeway, and we almost hit him.
Is he on the freeway?
Yes, ma'am.
Come on.
Please, 911, do you need medical, police, or fire?
No, I need police. I'm on I-10. There's a guy trying to jump in front of cars. He's taunting cars. He's throwing himself in front of cars. I'm going towards downtown. He just crossed over. I tried to stop him, and he crossed over to the other side. It looks like he was having a mental breakdown. He just kept trying to throw himself in front of cars.
He's 911, do you need medical, police, or fire?
Police.
So, Derek, what's the address of your emergency?
Well, it's not my address, but I'm at Gazin Street, and 2 houses down across the street, there's a guy yelling and screaming and jumping over fences, and I don't know what's going on.
So you're screaming to what?
I don't know, he was in my front yard, and I poked my head out, and he's saying something about his wife to this woman or something, and he
So he's also
jumped
going to
over.
people's front yards?
Huh?
He's also going to people's front yards?
Yeah, he's been in my front yard, the neighbors.
Are you aware of, or does he appear to have any mental issues?
I don't know.
Any weapons?
I'm unknown.
He said 911. Do you need medical, police, or fire?
Police.
What are you reporting?
Honestly, there's a guy who I was hearing noises. I was hearing my dogs bark, and I go outside. It's a guy with a metal, like a metal tube of some sort. He's bleeding. He was bleeding. He left. He seems a little crazy, to be honest with you, but he was in my backyard, and I believe he broke the water slide or whatever. He left already, but he was bleeding, and he kept saying something like he's being innocent. But I just heard him drop the metal pipe. He's somewhere near the restaurant that's been closed down. Right here, I hear the metal pipe.
Multiple officers responded and found Mr. Chavez armed with a metal object. He was distraught and apparently suicidal. Officers first tried talking with him. When that proved unsuccessful, they then deployed their soft impact weapons, which are bean bags fired from a shotgun, and tasers in an effort to stop him from harming himself.
Calm down, man.
We're
Calm
going to
down.
Jimmy's having some type of crisis or something.
Not sure if keep the air minimized.
He's holding on to something.
725, what was that location?
Hello? Gazin by the restaurant.
Hey, somebody get your taser out. Get your taser out. Hey, bud. We're here to help you, man. We're here to help you, bud. Who lied? What's going on, man?
Get on the ground, man. Just talk to us. I'm sorry. Come here, man. Just relax. You want to sit down? Just sit down. No shooting. Calm down.
Get on the ground now!
No, 321 left. Do you know any activity?
Calm down. Calm down. Stop doing that. Calm down. Sit down. Stop cutting yourself, man. Relax. Relax, man. Relax. Calm down. Calm down.
Down here.
Sit down, man. Just relax. Talk to us. Calm down, man. Relax.
Even after giving Mr. Chavez repeated verbal warnings, deploying multiple soft impact rounds and 2 tasers, Chavez was still armed with a metal object. He began moving quickly toward HPD Sergeant LeBlanc and a Precinct 6 deputy. Fearing for his and Deputy Garduno's safety, Sergeant LeBlanc discharged his duty weapon twice, striking Mr. Chavez. Precinct 6 Deputy Garduno also deployed his taser. Officers then immediately attempted to detain Mr. Chavez and render aid. As they did so, an HPD officer intentionally dropped her deployed taser to keep her fellow officers from becoming entangled in the wires.
Calm down. I got you, brother. I got you.
Down here.
Talk to us.
Hey, bud, get on the ground. Hey, get... Bud! Seven seal 7 shots fired.
Sir, stop! Get the f*** Get on the ground!
They're good. Always on crossfire. Don't move, man. Don't move. I'm down. Get down. Get down. Just relax, but just talk to us. Nobody get your crossfire. Be careful. Down.
Get on the ground
Just
right now!
relax, man. Relax. Just relax.
Watch the crossfire, guys. Watch the crossfire.
Calm down.
Sergeant, stay on the ground!
Due to Mr. Chavez's actions, the officers were unable to detain him and render aid. They then spent approximately 10 minutes trying to convince Mr. Chavez to let them help him. Still armed with the metal object, Mr. Chavez refused all such attempts and continued to harm himself and threaten officers. Also, during this time, another sergeant deployed soft impact rounds on 3 separate occasions when Mr. Chavez attempted to crawl out of a ditch.
Hey, drop that knife, man. Drop the knife, man, please. Please drop the knife. Stop doing that to yourself, man. Stop doing that. Hey, we're here to help you, bud. Just please comply with us. Please comply.
Just calm down, man.
24C13.
Don't get up. Do not get up.
We want to get you the medical help that you need, man, but you got to allow us to do it. You have to allow us, bud. You have to allow us to do it. Please put that down, man. I don't want you to hurt yourself. Come on, man.
Zach, come on. Hey, Zach, look at me. Look. Look at the light. Look at the light, Zach. What's going on? What's going on, Zach? Zach? Zach, come on, man. I need you to talk. Zach, that's fine. You can be mad at me. Okay, who's that? Who's that? Zach, who is that? That. You're not snitching? I'm just trying to help you out. That's all I'm trying to do. No, Zach, that's not what we want. Zach, come on, bro. Just keep talking to me. Hey, that's fine. That's fine. You can say you want. But I'm still here to help. Okay? I'm still here to help. You're bleeding out, so let me help you. I can help you, Zach. You gotta let me do it, though. You gotta let me do it. That's all I want to do is help you. That's all I want to do, Zach. Hey, Zach, what are you digging for? Come on, man. Let me help. Hey, Zach. Zach. Focus on me, Zach. You're bleeding and I want to help. Zach, I want to help.
At one point, Mr. Chavez charged out of the ditch in the direction of officers. A sergeant deployed a soft impact weapon. A fourth time, and Officer Wynn, who was to Mr. Chavez's right, discharged his duty weapon.
Did someone tell them to shut off their Zach, chill! Zach, chill! Chill, Zach! Chill!
Officers continued to give Mr. Chavez verbal commands, but he did not comply. He threw the piece of metal he had been holding in his hand in the direction of the officers and then grabbed the wires of the taser that was lying on the ground. Mr. Chavez started pulling the taser towards him, and when he grabbed the taser, Sergeant LeBlanc and 3 officers discharged their duty weapons at Mr. Chavez, striking him multiple times.
Chill, Zach! Zach! Zach, stop! Zach, stay on the ground! Zach! Stay on the ground! Zach! Guys, crossfire now. Everyone lower your guns. You guys are at a crossfire. Lower your guns and start circling around to help them out.
Don't do it, man. Don't do it. No, don't do it.
Calm down. Calm down.
Don't do it, man. Don't do it.
He saw something in his hand.
Don't do it.
Doesn't have.
Cease fire! Cease fire!
Calm down. Calm down.
Cease fire! Cease fire!
Okay. Which one?
On the Peter Road or is it okay on Side Street?
On the Peter, at the Stephen East Freeway at the stop sign.
Okay.
Inbound or outbound?
Everybody line, stay line, stay line!
Oh, to the media, please.
If someone else already arrived though.
Inbound or outbound?
Outbound.
officers and members of the Houston Fire Department subsequently treated Mr. Chavez on the scene. Houston Fire transported him to a local area hospital, but sadly, he succumbed to his gunshot wounds. Okay, I'm going to walk you all now through the sequence of events. The first, the Houston Police Department shot a total of 24 rounds in this incident. The first shooting occurred when you see Mr. Chavez move quickly towards Sergeant LeBlanc and Deputy Garduno. Sergeant LeBlanc fired 2 shots, striking Mr. Chavez. Those 2 shots, the department, myself, and the chain of command, we consider those 2 shots to be objectively reasonable. It's important for the community to know, under the law, we can't look at these things with 20/20 hindsight. And the standard that we have to use in terms of the objective reasonableness is the standard that we use. What would a reasonable officer in a similar situation do? We have determined those 2 shots were objectively reasonable based on the totality of the circumstances and the facts in this case. The second discharge of a firearm was by Officer Nguyen, who shot the 1 shot a little bit after those 2 shots were shot by Sergeant LeBlanc, and that's when you see Mr. Chavez get up and with the edge, what they believe to be an edge weapon, potentially they thought it was a knife, and moved towards an officer. Officer Nguyen fired 1 shot, and at the same time, Sergeant Reedy fired 1 shot from his less lethal beanbag shotgun. That 1 shot has been determined to be objectively reasonable by the department. The third and final sequence of events in this case was the 21 shots fired. In the last sequence, Sergeant LeBlanc fired 2 shots, Officer Tapia fired 6 shots, Officer Alvarado fired 7 shots, and Officer Rubio fired 6 shots. The discharge of those 21 shots by those 4 members of the Houston Police Department are not objectively reasonable. I don't consider them objectively reasonable. The chain of command does not consider them objectively reasonable. And I believe that anyone that watches this tape, that sees this, would see that they had a lot of opportunities and a lot of other options readily available to them that we, as long as I'm the police chief in this city, I'll expect my officers to take. You don't get to shoot somebody 21 times, because at that time, when we discharged those 21 rounds, Mr. Chavez was at his greatest level of incapacitation. He had been shot more than once. He had been, there had been additional 5 cartridges of tasers discharged at him, 2 by Officer Alvarado, 2 by Officer Leja, and 1 by Deputy Garduno from Precinct 6. We had also deployed a total of 6 beanbags from Sergeant LeBlanc and 4 beanbags from Sergeant Reedy. Again, we have concluded that the last barrage of rounds, the 21 rounds, are not objectively reasonable based on the totality of the circumstances in this case. The autopsy results. The medical examiner has identified total 24 rounds were shot. He has identified 29 total wounds, which includes entry and exit. Okay? A total of 29 wounds, entry, and exit. These wounds consist of skip rounds, bullets, fragments entering and exiting. So keep in mind that a lot of those wounds are from Mr. Chavez was basically on the ground when that last shooting sequence occurred. A lot of those rounds are skip rounds that strike the pavement first, they fragment, and so a lot of those wounds, a significant number of those wounds, will be what's called fragments, from bullet fragments. Does everybody understand that? Okay? A total of 22 slugs and fragments were recovered, and I don't have the breakdown of the slugs. The ballistic evidence is currently in the possession of the Forensic Science Center. They have indicated to us that it's a very complicated process because of the 4 weapons involved, and they will not have a complete ballistics report to the DA until the end of September. So that has not been completed. So we still haven't they still haven't figured out which bullet struck from which weapon. Toxicity on Mr. Chavez. Mr. Chavez had methamphetamine, amphetamine, and ethanol in his system. There were 24 and a half hours of video that were reviewed by the Special Investigations Unit and by the Internal Affairs Division. All 24 and a half hours of video, and consisting of 39 videos in total that were relevant to this investigation, are in the possession of the Houston Harris County District Attorney's Office for their use in their criminal process. I will say that this incident was very dynamic, as you can see. If you all recall, months ago when we first spoke after this incident, I said it was a very dynamic scene with a lot of context, and I believe that what you have seen here is from beginning to end with everything in context in terms of what the officers saw that day. In terms of what the officers did, for a good part of this incident, this event, was consistent with our training and our expectations of our men and women. They responded to a call where they knew it was a man in crisis and a suicidal person. Every single member of this department is trained in CIT, how to deal with people in a mental health crisis. If you look at that video, you will see that they've followed their training. They were trying to de-escalate. They were trying to get him to comply. They were being calm. They were creating distance. On day one, since the minute I got to this department, on day one of academy training, I, Executive Assistant Chief Finner, Executive Assistant Chief Slinkard, the Chief over Training Command, go and meet with the cadets on day one. I've made my expectations very clear, and the union is, when they're telling their members that you don't have to listen to what the chief is saying, that's a disservice. We make it clear that we will require them to utilize time, create distance, or keep your distance when you go to a critical incident, especially when you're dealing with somebody in distress. We then tell them to use time, distance, and when needed, numbers, call for backup. Make sure you have sufficient resources on scene. And then we tell them, not just on day one, but throughout the academy, including at graduation in front of their own families, that we require them to utilize cover and concealment when at all possible. And we will, after conclusion of this press conference, release this video in its entirety. It will be placed on our YouTube webpage for the department. And we will also place links to our presentation to the Academy Cadet classes on day one that 3 of those 4 shooters that at the end of this incident were part of and got to see. The last thing I will say is that the taser itself was empty. Both of the cartridges had been discharged, but the officers indicate that they weren't aware of that. But let me be clear. It's objectively not reasonable to utilize deadly force when a man's already been shot multiple times, has been tased, has been on the ground, has shown that he really cannot get up, and quite frankly, it's inexplicable to me when they had plenty of opportunity to back up and continue to be doing what they were doing, for them to stay the line and shoot a man 21 times. I cannot defend that. And to anybody that wants to defend it, don't come to this department, because as long as I'm the police chief here, similar circumstances, we will not allow people to use deadly force unless it's objectively reasonable, and it just simply isn't. So with that, I want to thank the community for your patience. We live at a time when people want instant results. As this community can see from the response of the union before they've even seen the videos or the evidence, it is quick, and they will leave no stone unturned to defend these officers. I'm here for the other officers. I'm here for this community. And it's important for the community to remember that process matters, and we wanted to make sure we followed the process, because the one thing that I do not want to do as a police chief representing the best interest of the men and women of the Houston Police Department and the community that we serve and the city that employs us is to cave in and not follow a process. And next thing you know, we lose an appeal that all four have already filed appeals. At the disciplinary review hearing, the officers read a statement that you will get in these disciplinary memos, and I'm going to turn it over to the mayor, and then we'll go for questions. They read written statements to me and the chain of command, and then they waived additional questions. I can just say that I had a lot of questions, and I don't see very many good answers for those questions. And we plan to vigorously defend our decision as a police department in terms of this incident and ask the questions that we didn't get to ask earlier. And so with that, I want to turn it over to my boss, Mayor Turner. And again, Mayor, thank you for your patience, and thank you for your courage that, unlike other cities where sometimes politicians worry too much about the politics, you trusted us to do our job. And I think it's that Harvard education with your law degree that you understand that process matters, and that's what we followed here was our process. Thank you, Mayor.
Chief, let me thank you, and let me thank you and the command staff for the investigation of this matter, and for laying out the facts to all of us and to the city today. Let me just start off by saying that what happened the night of April the 21st has dramatically affected many people in this city. Nicolas Chavez's life was taken, and his family must live with their personal loss and anguish for the rest of their lives. And today is a difficult day for all of us, especially the Nicolas Chavez family, to the Houston Police Department, to the 4 police officers and their families who are being affected, who have been dismissed, and for the city of Houston. The video is difficult to watch, and I have seen it several times. It's difficult to watch without questioning why the shooting happened in the end, and wishing the encounter could have ended differently, and knowing that it should have had a different outcome. It was roughly a 15-minute or so encounter, and for almost the entire time, I cannot fault the police officers for what they did. But in those final seconds, when deadly force was used, I have, as mayor of this city, asked several questions. Did Mr. Chavez pose an immediate threat to any police officer or to the general public? What weapon or instrument did he have that could have posed an imminent threat to the officers or to the general public? And if Mr. Chavez had a taser in his hand, would that have justified the use of deadly force? And those questions I've asked over and over and over again. And in this case, I have concluded that there was no imminent threat to any police officer, and and they could have returned home to their families. And I've said that many times. I want police officers to do their jobs. I recognize that their jobs every day is a difficult one, and at the end of the day, I want each and every one of our police officers to return home to their families. There was no threat to the general public, and Mr. Chavez only posed a threat to himself. And he, too, could have lived and could have gotten the help that he desperately needed. I have the responsibility, as mayor of this city, of representing the entire city, every single person that lives in our city, classified, police officers, firefighters, municipal workers, and the 2.3 million Houstonians. And when employees follow the policy and the rules and do things that are right, as mayor, I will stand with each and every one of them. Even in the midst of criticism, I will stand with you. But when employees fail to follow the policy and they don't do things right, we have to call them things as they are. And I have concluded that the shooting was not justified in this case, the shooting at the end. And that's unfortunate. And the dismissal of the 4 officers in this particular case is warranted. The city has roughly 5,300 police officers, and 99.9% of them do an incredible job each and every day. We fully recognize that they put their lives on the line each and every day. And since I've been mayor, some have died in the line of duty. And have been permanently injured. And since I've been mayor, we have supported them, provided the equipment that they needed, and funded this department, even in the midst of criticism. But the disciplinary action being taken today does not lessen the support or the respect or the admiration of each and every one of our police officers. But the action being taken today does say, in our city, we hold everyone accountable, that there are consequences for certain actions, that every person in our city has value and is important, whether they're healthy or whether they're vulnerable, whether they're in substance abuse crisis or facing mental health issues. Everyone, every life is important. No one should conclude that the dismissal of these officers is an indictment on HPD or the 5,300 police officers. But when you are wrong, there are consequences. And for the good of every police officer who serves, for the good of everyone that follow the rules, that protect this city, it is important for us to call a ball and a strike a strike. And when police officers, when they do their job, I will stand by you. But when you fire, like in this case in the end, when there was no imminent threat, then accountability must take place in order for our city to move forward. And that's what's happening here today. It's not an easy matter, and it's difficult for all of us. But you can't bring back Mr. Chavez, and you can't fill the hole in this family's life. But we can move forward, in spite of our pain, to work together to heal our city. And that's what we're doing today.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think anybody could have said it. It is a sad day. The day of this incident, Chief Finner and I were able to express our condolences to Nicholas's mom, his wife, and I was able to express my condolences to his dad when he came to see the video. And the pain that the mayor feels, we all feel, because we failed. And it's not fun to fire 4 officers, but it's what we do. This profession comes with scrutiny, and we've got to call them as we see them. And I can just tell you that the fact that you let us do our job and trust us to do our job just means the world to all of us, and we thank you for your support. So with that, we'll open up the questions, and I'll do some Spanish.
Chief, when the mayor said to you this shooting is not justifiable, what was your reaction? Can you lean on him for guidance with his firing?
You know, the mayor is a man that hired me for a reason. He trusts my judgment, and he has to assess my thinking. So he never told me, I think that you need to fire them. He let me present the shooting to him, the investigation to him, and I said, Mayor, I told him what my findings are, and obviously you heard his findings.
And your reaction when he told you that he thought the shooting was not justifiable?
I think we're both in the same place. It's a sad day, but it is what it is.
Chief, it happens very quickly. I think it's, having never seen one of these, it happens very quickly at the end. If you are in that moment as an officer, what would you have them do in that moment? Because it seems that they fire as soon as he touches the taser.
Yeah, first of all, you have plenty of time there to back up. They already had distance. There was cover all over the place. You know, a taser can be a deadly weapon in terms of incapacitating an officer who's in a one-on-one situation. Somebody tases you, you got to assume they're going to grab your gun and shoot you. So the notion that just because somebody grabs a taser with 28 officers on scene, that's not the boogeyman, that taser. All you got to do, that man could have had 100 cartridges in the empty taser. The maximum effective range is 21 feet. I'm done. That's all I got to do. Back up. Do what you've been doing, not hold the line. And unfortunately, we don't get to judge an incident and say, hey, you did a great job for the first 2/3 of that event, or the 3/4 you did great. But that last quarter, you completely got it wrong. We have to judge every part of this incident, and you cannot justify the 21 rounds at the end.
Chief, you might have heard the union's press conference today. They're saying that they followed all the policies correctly in this incident. How do you respond to that?
I think that the memo that I'm going to be releasing here with the mayor, we have the discipline memo, speaks for itself. And the louder a union screams, I think that's telling. I really don't, I'm not going to litigate it with them. I look forward to the appeal.
Do you believe there should be a policy change as a result of what happened to you with Chavez?
No. No policy change here. This is a matter of judgment. And if you're that fearful with 28 officers of a man that's been wounded already, I don't need you as a police officer. Do you want me to bring them back so they can do it again to somebody else? I don't think so. The video speaks for itself, and as does the memo. What else?
You said that the taser can go 21 feet. How far away were the officers?
They had plenty of opportunity. They, in their own statements, said they're 21 feet, and some said 15 to 21 feet. My stride's 3-foot stride. It takes 2 to 3 steps to get away. So again, that's in the memo.
The union also said that because of this incident, the morale that was already low among the police department is now even lower. They said even though you have publicly stated that the city has funded the police department and you have publicly encouraged other officers from other departments that have less funding to apply to HPD, that the actions today, which they have put to you as unnecessary, would be detrimental to hiring officers, morale, and other
Well,
incidents.
if officers from around the country see that last use of deadly force and they think it's okay, don't come here. Because as long as I'm the police chief, similar circumstances, I want to say you're going to get indefinitely suspended. Don't come here. This is not the place for you. This is a place for thoughtful individuals. This is a place for thinkers, and then a place for people that understand the sanctity of life isn't just the sanctity of the police life, it's the sanctity of everybody's life. And when you watch my presentation to our cadets on day one, we make our expectations very clear. I challenge you to watch it. We're going to link it to this video that you just saw later. Go ahead, Mayor.
If I can just add to that. But Joe, Ray, and Doug, all of them that spoke today, I think they will tell you the city has been supportive of HPD. The city has been supportive. We've funded HPD. We've consistently said we need more police officers. When they needed the equipment, for example, to protect themselves, we've stood up and we provided that equipment. So the city has been supportive. But it doesn't mean just because you recognize or call out when something, when things have been gone wrong, and you are having accountability, that doesn't mean that you're not supportive. All of us are held accountable. All of us. There are 21,000 employees as a whole. So whether municipal workers or classified employees, we all have to be held accountable. And that's for the betterment of the entire department.
And Mayor, the union also stated that your own civilian oversight board has found that these officers acted within reason, and one of the folks wrote a 14-page letter to you guys saying that they think were justified. What can you tell us about that, about your oversight panel and how they view this incident?
Well, there are individuals there and it represents the Police Oversight Board. I will say that the board itself is one of the charges that the Mayor's Task Force on Police Reform is to take a look at that Independent Police Oversight Board. And so I have not spoken with them or with any one of them. They have not spoken to me on it. But this is one instance in which, for example, in this case, I too have had an opportunity to look at this video several times, not once, but several times. And these are conclusions, for example, that I have reached. And it is important to have accountability. And again, this is not an indictment on the Houston Police Department as a whole. This is we're assessing this particular situation and drawing conclusions based on what happened on April 21st.
Mr. Mayor, if it is in fact true that the Independent Police Oversight Board did not recommend any discipline for these 4 officers in this case, and you can tell us if that's true or not, what does that tell you about the Independent Police Oversight Board, and is it time that they be reformulated to maybe reflect some of the community concerns, even without the task force having to recommend it?
Well, I think I can safely say, without getting the specifics from the task force, they have not made the recommendations, given their recommendations to me. I anticipate getting those recommendations by the end of this month. But I think I'm 99.999% certain that there will be some adjustments to the Independent Police Oversight Board. I think when it's all said and done, it will be revamped in several different ways. But before I draw any final conclusions, I do want to see and hear from the task force, because they are specifically charged with assessing it. But I do.
Say to you that they didn't find anything wrong with this incident.
I have not talked.
That's not even accurate.
See, I haven't.
Well, then, Chief, if you could, because obviously.
Yeah, because see, I can't speak. I can't speak specifically to that.
Hold, excuse me. First of all, that's not accurate. When a lot of inaccurate statements were made, but let's be real clear. There's only one police chief in the city of Houston. That's me, and there's only one mayor. It was not accurate. You'll have to wait till the appeal, because that process is supposed to be confidential, and the IPOB's role is not to tell me what to do. The IPOB's role is only to say whether or not the investigation was thorough, to see if they have any questions, and then the IPOB's role is to recommend policy violations, not discipline. The IPOB has got 4 different panels, okay? So only one panel got to see this case. Then we have the Administrative Disciplinary Committee, and the IPOB member in that committee recommended E, which means indefinite. E less, which means less than indefinite, but more than 15-day suspension. So we're not going to get into that, because at the end of the day, under 143 of the of statute, I'm responsible for discipline, and that process is confidential. And I'm telling you, it's not accurate. Let me just say one last thing. Let me just say one. Excuse me. Let me just say one last thing. I said this to my command staff yesterday. If you have a choice between taking at most 2 or 3 steps when a man is reeling in a taser that you're so afraid of, and you think that the answer is just to stand your ground because the statute allows you, instead of taking 2 or 3 steps, if that's how little you value life, I don't need you on this department, because that's somebody's child. And I said that to the entire command staff. If that's too much to ask, I don't need you on this department. The community doesn't need you on this department. And most of the officers that would take those 2 or 3 steps, if even needed, because arguably there was really no threat there. So that's all I got to say on that.
Well, Chief, I just wanted to ask, what about there's a number of other incidents involving officer-involved shootings, and community activists have called for the release of all their videos, of course, over the last couple of months. Where are you standing? Where do you stand on that, and can there be some sort of substantial policy so the community can have a...
We are in the process of what you just saw for the recent shootings that folks are waiting to recreate the same process. And in the next few weeks, you're going to see that's going to be our process. I'm waiting for the mayor and the task force to give us recommendations on timing. But it's important for people to realize there's a lot of redaction that has to go on. There's a lot of investigation that has to go on. And it's very time-consuming. It is very time-consuming, and staffing's an issue. So we will come up with the actual policy with the direction of the mayor once his task force speaks. But we are in the process of doing several more in the next few weeks.
There are people who say that without the citizen video that was posted, what you are doing will not have happened.
I'm sorry, what?
There are people who will say that without the video of the person who watched,
Okay. All right.
they would have this process, the dismissal or whatever would not have happened. What do you have to say to that?
Yeah, well, there's no videos on other incidents from citizens where we have had officers charged based on our investigation. So I think our actions and our history speaks for itself. I don't think that's even worthy of response. Pay attention. Pay attention to what happens in this department.
Chief, you indicated that you turned over the evidence, all of it,
Yeah.
back on June the 23rd. Following George Floyd and the tragic situation that took place in Minneapolis, there has been a rush by other departments nationwide to get to the bottom of what happened in these incidents that were not justified. This said, this took place in April, and here we are addressing this in September. If the evidence was turned over in June, why are we talking about this in the absence 90 days later?
Because that's the criminal piece. This is an administrative piece. And keep in mind that the ballistics isn't even done. And so this is my process. It's not about how fast or how slow. It's about how thorough, how accurate, and we're a results-oriented organization. And the results need to be, we find out the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we take the appropriate administrative or criminal action, and we leave it, and we win an appeal. We follow the process.
And a quick follow-up to the mayor, as we heard one of my colleagues indicate, Mayor, there's been a number of officer-involved shootings much confidence do you have in your chief today as you talk about a rebound in the department?
I have a great deal of confidence in my chief. If I didn't, he wouldn't be chief. Okay? It is important, for example, look, we need law enforcement and the community on the same page, on the same team, moving in the same direction. And accountability is on both ends. Accountability deals with the people that we're having to interact with on a daily basis. And then it's accountability even on our end. And as long as people believe that we'll be straight with them, and we operate with the greatest degree of integrity, then we can keep both on the same page, on the same team, moving in the same direction. And that's why what's happening, as unfortunate as it is, for 4 police officers to be terminated from the force, it is important for there to be accountability, you see, in this entire process. So, but I have a great deal of trust and respect in this police chief, and this command team, and in the 5,300 police officers that are serving this city. Okay? And so I wanted to be very clear, because I did hear some of the union comments. This is not an indictment on 5,300 police officers. It is not. But it does say for our city that we are all accountable. And that's an important piece. Otherwise, you endanger police officers. When the community loses trust and there's anger and reaction, that doesn't help anybody either. So the community has to believe that everybody will be held accountable. And that's what's happening here today.
I want to move to Spanish, Mayor, if that's okay, real quick. In Español.
¿Por qué se abrió este video con tanto descripción gráfica de lo que pasó y se está dando a conocer al público?
Porque la transparencia es muy importante. El público en el 2020 que están demandando transparencia. Pero como lo dije a la comunidad hace varios meses, en abril, cuando esto ocurrió, que teníamos mucha evidencia, mucho video, y que por favor tengan paciencia. Al fin del día, lo que ocurrió aquí hoy, en este evento, los primeros 2 tiros del sargento LeBlanc tenían justificación. El tiro del oficial Wen tenía suficiente justificación. Pero al final, cuando disparaban 21 tiros, no tenían justificación. Ya el señor Chávez estaba herido, no podía casi ni pararse, y al fin del día los oficiales por muchos minutos reaccionaron correctamente, caminaron para atrás, tratando de calmar la situación, pero al final, cuando ya estaba herido, ya no hay ningún peligro ahí, no podemos apoyar y soportar y decir que tenían justificación al final. Fueron 21 tiros que dispararon, 4 oficiales, 2 por el sargento LeBlanc, 6 por el oficial Tapia, que es latino, 7 por el oficial Alvarado y 6 por el oficial Rubio. El examinador médico indicó que hay 29 lugares donde hay evidencia que entró o salió o el balazo o partes de las balas, porque muchos le dieron a la tierra primero, entonces son nada más fragmentos que fue lo que entró. También el señor Chávez tenía metanfetamina, anfetamina y alcohol en su sistema. Al fin del día tenemos que, no puedo apoyar y soportar oficiales que al fin lo único que tenían que hacer es ponte para atrás. ¿Qué miedo? Si tienes tanto miedo, no tienes que ser policía. Y por eso terminamos 4 oficiales, un sargento y 3 oficiales, por el tiroteo al final.
Esa iba a ser mi pregunta para las personas que van a ver este video y ven que el hombre está agarrando la pistola eléctrica Taser. ¿Nos puede decir por qué ya no era un peligro?
Bueno, para empezar, si tú estás uno solo, fajándose con un sospechoso y te quita el taser está vivo, Para mí eso es un peligro porque si estás solito o dos y te mete el taser, pierdes la conciencia, te saca la pistola y te mata. Pero cuando hay 28 policías, no uno, no dos, no 10, 28 policías, y por los primeros 15 minutos hicieron lo que es correcto, lo que le entrenamos a hacer, y al final, cuando ya él está herido, ya casi no se puede parar, van a disparar 21 balas, como le dije yo a todos mis colegas en el liderazgo ayer. Si la vida de una persona, un ser humano, no es tan importante para ti, que en vez de darte para atrás 2 o 3 pasitos, porque acuérdese que son 21 pies, está más que el taser. Trabaja. No necesito aquí siendo policía. Mientras que yo sea el jefe, no vamos a permitir eso.
¿No fue justificable lo que hicieron los oficiales?
Al final, no. No hay justificación.
Se dijo que no apoyaría a los oficiales que estén teniendo este tipo de actitudes o el approach que tienen con la comunidad. ¿Realmente están preparados o no con entrenamiento para lidiar en situaciones específicas donde hay problemas de índole mental?
Sí, acuérdese que todos los oficiales tienen entrenamiento, todos. También el primer día de la academia, le digo que son mis expectaciones, el primer día de la academia. Y también acuérdese que por los primeros 15 minutos hicieron todo lo que están entrenados. En vez de estar acercándote, se hicieron para atrás. Y al final, cuando ya él estaba herido, en vez de hacer lo mismo, se pararon ahí y lo abalazaron.
En perspectiva con la táctica de ser oficiales en el field, en el campo, ¿qué es lo que debieron de haber hecho o qué hicieron?
Lo mismo, vas a ver la carta, pero lo mismo que hicieron por los primeros 15 minutos, cuando él no estaba herido, tenía lo que ellos pensaban que era una navaja, no dispararon, y después disparan 21 balazos. No lo puedo apoyar. ¿Ok? That's it.
You were very active just now. I'll talk about 28 other officers were there. 28 other officers were there.
I mean, look.
Hold on. My question is, were there any internal discipline with additional officers separate of these firings?
There is one more hearing that's coming. And I'm not going to talk about it until for one other officer. But in terms of the firings, that's the only firings.
And is there any difference in your mind between the actions of the first officer that shoots in those final seconds and the second, third, and fourth?
Not based on the tally of the circumstances, no.
Chief, una última pregunta.
The memo speaks for itself.
Cuando hablé con la fiscal Kimon sobre este caso, me decía, es evidente que hubo falta de entrenamiento, escuchamos a todos los policías disparando a la misma vez.
No, habían 20,
O decía, esto parece como un juego en simpatía, que los oficiales pueden llegar a disparar todos a la vez cuando...
Eso es lo que ella dice, pero eso es no lo que ellos indicaron. Ellos indicaron que no era sympathetic fire. Ellos dijeron que no, que tenían temor. Y si tú tienes tanto temor a un muchacho que está herido, que tiene un taser, que no te puede hacer nada si estás más de 21 pies, y en vez de pararse más para atrás, disparas, no necesito ser policía. And so the question in English and Spanish was that apparently somebody at the DA's office said that they believe it's sympathetic fire. And I will just say that none of the 4 officers claimed sympathetic fire. They claimed that they fired because they were fear for their life with that taser of serious bodily injury or death, and that's not objectively reasonable. And so with that, I want to thank you all. Thank you, Congresswoman, for being here, and I'm going to call up Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee.
I'm the only real civilian here. I'm here in the mayor's jurisdiction, the city of Houston, and the chief of police jurisdiction. But these are issues that we confront as a member of the Judiciary Committee and working across the nation on these issues. There are 2 responsibilities, I believe, of any public servant, and that is to heal the hurt and the pain that citizens, constituents feel. In this instance, my deepest sympathy to the Chavez family, their children and their extended family, mother and father. There is pain there, and we as public servants must comfort that pain. The second thing is to do the right thing, and to do it without bias against law enforcement, and to do it without bias against the victims. What I have seen here today and why I was willing to be here because I have lived my life in the United States Congress working with law enforcement across the nation, federal law enforcement of all levels, and I have been to funerals of law enforcement officers. Department of Homeland Security officers have fallen, and we have acknowledged their passing. U.S. Capitol Police were killed while I was in the United States Congress. We honor them every year. And every year, short of this year with COVID-19, May 15th, I'm on the East Capitol of the United States Capitol to honor the fallen officers from across America. And so what I say today, as painful as it is, we have a duty to do the right thing. And as I have seen this video, and there has not been a prosecution or actions by the next step, so we cannot prejudge. But I can tell you that we all know that the community was hurting. The good news is that we did not utilize only that pain to make a factual decision. But what I would say to you in all of the work I've done, the element of imminent threat, we call it in fear of your life, is the key element. Do you fear that you will not go home to your family? And I will put my hand on a stack of Bibles saying that I honestly am committed to that for law enforcement across the nation, from FBI to DEA to ATF to HPD. But then I have to ask the question, have we given them the tools that they could utilize even in the midst of all of that confusion? It was clear that Mr. Chavez was in a mental health crisis. And it was clear, based on all that we are trying to do in dealing with public safety and protect and serve, that the de-escalation could have been the saving grace for all of them, officers and Mr. Chavez. De-escalation, moving back, and the thought of whether or not excessive force, which resulted in his death, was going to be the ultimate decision. So I just want to conclude by saying my prayers are with the Chavez family. My prayers are with those officers that have been terminated by this chief. My prayers are with the Houston Police Department. My tone is one of humbleness and the reckoning that I will be asked many questions post this press conference. But it will be, hopefully, that I will be seen to have responded from my heart, along with the facts. And most importantly, I hope that what will be noted is that when we talk about the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, we will talk about it not in a context of contentiousness, but in a context of bringing us all together. So I pray for the community, the city of Houston and beyond, and I ask for calm and peace, and I want to make myself available to anyone's inquiry. This tragic incident happened in the 18th Congressional District, near the historic 5th Ward, the place where Mickey Leland and Barbara Jordan started their careers. And so it's very personal to me. And I believe that we have, in this instance, an opportunity, prayerfully, to bring us together no matter what our respective backgrounds, from what walk of life, to be able to focus on what is really America, what really America is about. It's people helping each other, acknowledging each other's pain, respecting each other's position and office, and willing to stand with each other in a time of crisis. I stand with the Chavez family in this time of crisis, and I stand with those who know how to, in their own way, reimagine, protect, and serve. And I believe that what we're trying to do today is to do that in the most honest and prayerful manner that we've been able to do. I think our prayers will be answered, and I ask again for calm in this community and calm as we go forward to try and make a difference. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.